When I think of black on white violence in Mississippi, I think of South Africa, where there's an enormous amount of black on white crime, violence, and murder. But the world has turned its back on South Africa because the world believes South Africa deserves it. Well, we get a little bit of that in Mississippi too, where there's a lot of black on white crime. We're going to see two examples of some black on white murder here. Then we're going to see a lot of people ignoring, denying, condoning, excusing, encouraging, and even lying about it. Let's start off with an elderly woman who was just out in there taking the trash out. Car full of the fellas passed by, saw her, beat her, and killed her for fun.
Story in downtown Jackson, Megan, the trial for that driveway murder that left Bellhaven on edge for months.
Yeah, Tammy, you know, this was a huge story when it broke a few years ago. A gunman shot and killed one woman while she was just moving the trash cans in her boyfriend's driveway. 16 WABT's Ross Adams is live at the Hinds County Courthouse tonight. Ross.
Well, Megan, in this first day of testimony in the trial, the jury got to see a videotaped confession of one of the teens involved in the murder of the Bellhaven woman. This afternoon, a JPD detective testified that 19-year-old Jerome Moore admitted he owned the .380 caliber handgun the trigger man used to shoot and kill 69-year-old Carolyn Temple in January of last year. They said that Moore told them he later sold the weapon to someone on the street and that he was driving the car after they left the crime scene. But the defense claims the video shows officers coerced Moore to testify, or rather to confess to the crime. His family believes Moore was high on the illegal drug spice when officers questioned him.
I understand all that, but I don't think he should be charged with capital murder if he didn't pull the trigger. I understand he was involved and he have to get punished, but I don't think it should be capital murder.
Moore's family says the system failed him. They say he had spent time at the state hospital in Whitfield, and they say it's a shame that a woman had to die before he got some help. But it's not the kind of help they wanted. If he's convicted on this capital murder charge, Moore could get life in prison.
All that took place in Jackson, Mississippi, the largest city in Mississippi, a chocolate city, and most recently most well known for electing Chokwe Lumumba as its mayor. He was only mayor for a year or so before he died, but he was most well known for leading a movement, I don't know what you call it, Pan-African, I don't even know what you call it, but set aside an African separatist movement where you would set aside a huge chunk of the South only for black people. But the spirit of Attorney Chokwe Lumumba lives on in this city councilman who you may recognize from something we did a few months ago.
Well, I suggest we get the black leadership together, and as these jurisdictions come into Jackson, we throw rocks and bricks and bottles at them. That'll send the message, we don't want you in here.
Reaction on social media and from metro area law enforcement was swift.
Actually, Councilman Stokes is one inciting racism and violence against police officers.
Some even say they're concerned about the safety of their officers.
And that's why we're here in unity, saying we don't agree with it. We're very disappointed in Mr. Stokes' statements, and we stand unified against that kind of activity.
If I have somebody throwing a brick or a bottle at me, that's it's a threat to my life, to my health, and my safety. To me, he's inciting some innocent young person that doesn't understand the law is going to get hurt over it because of him, because I fully expect my deputies to defend themselves.
Take a look at this. Drugs, rolling papers, bottles full of liquor. These are just some of the items people are trying to smuggle into a Mid-South jail. A new sheriff promised to clean up the jail's reputation.
But one family told WREG investigator Stephanie Skurlock it's not enough because the man charged with killing their loved one is bragging about all the stuff he's getting behind bars.
An inmate sporting sunglasses, a gold chain, and caught posing for the camera is not how most people picture life behind bars. Yet 17-year-old murder suspect Brooklyn Trailer's Facebook timeline boasts photos of him and at least one other inmate while they're locked up in the Alcorn County Jail.
It's one thing to have to hear from the DA that it's going to be possibly 2 or 3 years if it goes to trial, but It's another thing when you see that, you know, her killer is actively on Facebook.
Traylor is charged with killing Aaron Crum's sister, Chris Ann Ledlow. Investigators say Traylor shot her in February during an attempted robbery at the convenience store where she worked. Locked up behind bars, Traylor brags on Facebook he's making more money in jail than on the streets.
The impression I got from the post and the pictures is that he's just living it up and having a good time.
Crum is upset Traylor can access Facebook and a cell phone. He says the family's complaints to the DA and the jail have gone unanswered. So WREG sat down with Alcorn County Sheriff Ben Caldwell to find out how this is happening.
It looks like to them he's having one big party in jail.
Right. I can assure you that we don't allow them to have parties in our jail. And again, I understand the family's concern, and it's my concern as well.
The sheriff says there's no way to prove Traylor is posting from jail. He says sometimes inmates give passwords to friends on the outside to post on their behalf. But he told me Traylor did have access to a cell phone at one point.
When that took place, he was placed in segregation. His visitation privileges were taken away from him. Some of his other privileges, such as commissary, access to television.
WREG exposed a history of problems at the Alcorn County Correctional Facilities 3 years ago. Last year, the state of Mississippi removed busloads of prisoners housed there because some inmates had their own keys to the jail while others could access drugs and cell phones. When Caldwell took over, he promised changes. The sheriff says keeping contraband out of the jail is one of his biggest challenges. Since March, he's arrested 2 of his own jailers for trying to bring stuff inside. He says he's conducting more shakedowns and added surveillance cameras inside and outside the jail. Take a look at what they recently kept from getting inside the jail. This is a picture of the evidence seized from a car caught circling a back fence near the rec yard at night. A dozen cell phones and chargers, earbuds, bags of what looks like marijuana, rolling papers, cigars, handheld video games, iPods, and plastic bottles filled with liquor. Caldwell believes the suspects wanted to throw the items over a fence for some inmates to retrieve later.
They have nothing to do but sit back in our jail and think of ways to get things into our facility. And we're constantly fighting to keep that from happening.
Caldwell says smuggling contraband into jails and prisons is a problem nationwide. He's promising to stop it whenever possible because he knows the implications.
It just looks like one big joke to him. You know, he's talking about going from like pistol whipping to money making.
The Crums say it hurts to see the teen arrested for killing this sister, daughter, and mother of 2 girls, bragging on social media from jail while they grieve their tragic loss.
It's a slap in our face. And, you know, Chris isn't here. She can't defend herself anymore, so somebody has to. And that's why I'm here.
In Corinth, Mississippi, Stephanie Skurlock, WREG.
It's one of the biggest cases in Mississippi in the last year, if not in the last decade. The death of 19-year-old Jessica Chambers, a Panola County girl who was found burned alive on Heron Road in Cortland, Mississippi, which is a town of 400 to 500 people. Everyone there knows everyone. That night at the scene, Jessica was able to give a name to responders, but after interviewing more than 150 people and looking through more than 20,000 phone records, they still haven't been able to tie that particular name to a person. Jessica was shipped to Memphis, where she died shortly after in a hospital, just after her mother was able to tell her that if she was still fighting and needed to let go, her family was with her. Since that time, the city of Cortland and the entire state of Mississippi has wondered what happened to Jessica, who would do this, and when will we see justice? Jessica was in a lot of ways exactly like any other teenage girl. She had a lot of friends, she had a lot of boyfriends, she had a job at a clothes store. She had recently gotten a new dog. She lived with her mom. She liked to cook. Apparently, she liked to cook biscuits. You know, she was somebody that was driven in various ways. She had talked to an author who came to speak at her church and told her that she had a story to tell. And the author said, well, good, next time I'm in town, we'll talk about it. And she said, all right, because I need people to hear my story. And the last thing she told that author was, don't forget me. And then the next thing the author hears is that she's been killed. So the question, when you say, who is Jessica, it's hard to pin that down because I don't know that a lot of people actually knew what all was going on with her at the time of her death. I think that she had stories to tell, and there was a part of her that was still, obviously like we all are at 19, trying to find herself. With the family, what I've found is that this is something that they not only can't deal with emotionally, but they can't wrap their head around it. Because when it's your daughter, it's hard to understand why somebody would want, and it's hard for a normal person to understand why somebody would want to do this to someone, but particularly when that is your child, and there was nothing you could do to stop it from happening. You didn't know what was going on. You couldn't get there. For both her mother and her father, when I talk to them, they both openly say, no, I'm not okay. You know, no, this is not making sense to me. And as her dad told me yesterday, he said, as the longer we go, the harder it gets, because of that vast number of people that Jessica knew that we talked about, and because of the number of connections that she had. It actually started turning over things that authorities didn't necessarily know were there. So as they went through these phone records and as they did the various forensic investigations on some of the data, they found a lot of things that tied some of the people that they were looking at into other crimes. As it started to go, they found that none of these people, at least in the 17 that have been arrested so far, connected to other activities, gangs and drugs and that kind of thing. None of those are suspects in her murder, but they are people who have been doing other illegal things. And so as this investigation has rolled on with the state guys and the feds and the local authorities, what they've found is that it helped them turn over information on several other crimes. That was something that Sheriff Dennis Darby had told me would be a fruit of this. He was really, as much as it was a terrible situation, it was a real positive to be able to bring in those outside resources to do some of the things that local authorities hadn't been able to do, as far as turning over some of the evidence on these other crimes that they were able to get when they made that group of arrests, 17 arrests in various gang and drug crimes about a month ago. What I've seen in the community and what I noticed right off the bat, a lot of people wanted to say that this was a racial crime or that it was gang motivated or things like that. One thing I noticed about Cortland is that these people have grown up together. They've known each other for decades. You know, they were in diapers together. I didn't, and still haven't, picked up a racial vibe to this at all. I think.
Updating breaking news now at 5. The man accused of burning a Panola County teenager alive could be heading back to Mississippi sooner than many thought.
Yeah. Quentin Tellis pled guilty in Louisiana today to illegally using the bank card of a murdered college student. Now, this happened just as the trial was starting there. A judge sentenced Tellis to 10 years. Soon he will be extradited to Panola County to answer to a capital murder charge in the death of Jessica Chambers.
WREG's Caitlin Alexander is live at the Panola County Sheriff's Office with what her family is saying about all this tonight. Caitlin?
Yeah, Richard, April, both her family and authorities still aren't exactly sure when Tellis will end up back here. They say when he arrives, they'll be ready for trial.
Oh, I'm ready for that day.
Lisa Chambers didn't expect the news this soon. Quentin Tellis pled guilty to a charge in Louisiana and is agreeing to be extradited here to answer for what he's accused of doing to this girl, whose face still smiles from Chambers' window.
Truth is, I don't really know of anything that could really be justice for what was done to her. Nothing we can do here on earth.
Tellis is facing a capital murder charge for brutally burning Chambers alive in December 2014. Tellis married a woman in Louisiana the following August, just before authorities arrested him in Monroe for using the bank card of a murdered college student. District Attorney John Champion was in Louisiana for the trial and talked to WREG on his way back home. He says the timeline of what happens next could be up to the Department of Corrections in Louisiana.
I don't say what happens.